Connecting. All right. Yep, we are live now. Okay, I'm Veronica Tash. I have with me Socialist Party USA Vice Presidential candidate Stephanie Cholensky. Yeah.
I think
So
it's former now, but close enough.
yeah. No votes have been cast for president or vice president yet.
It's true.
So you are still a candidate. But anyways, I'm sure a lot of people out there are eager to hear, how do you feel about achieving your goal of getting Donald Trump elected?
Yes, obviously that was my goal all along. Well, one thing I noticed is that I'm guessing the Harris campaign wanted to repeat Obama's momentum, um, and felt that perhaps by leaning into identity politics, because that's the only kind of feminism liberals seem to understand as far as the Democrats and their leadership. But what they failed to account for was Obama ran one of the most progressive campaigns in many decades. And that was a big reason behind why he mobilized so many people. And if you want to defeat someone who's running as a right populist, you don't do so by running as an establishment candidate. And really, if the Democrats were left, which they're not, let's be clear, they're a center right party, but if they were left, they wouldn't have any problem countering Trump's narrative of being pro-worker and standing up for those who feel and are left behind by the economy. But because they're focused on make neoliberalism great again, they really don't have a great way to counter his rhetoric. At least I can't speak for Trump voters, but for people who really are frustrated and have never seen the system work for them, we're gonna we're gonna make it like it was in the days of when we had some semblance of a social welfare state, which we never really had a functioning welfare state, because
No,
capitalism needs poverty in order to drive wages down. But it's just not very appealing, and they have to see this. I mean, they have to see it in the polling. Anyone who was watching that night or even weeks before had to see this. She just didn't have the appeal because, I mean, she was for fracking. They've doubled down on, being pro police. I mean,
anti-immigrant.
yeah, yes, and I mean, that's the thing. People act as if all these Trump voters are stupid. I mean, some of them are ignorant, and people do vote out of ignorance, but people know that the system is screwing them over. I mean, they're not that ignorant.
They're rejecting
Unfortunately,
the status quo for 3 years
yes,
in a row.
and it is very unfortunate that they're willing to put up with bigotry to do so. No, there are definitely Trump voters who are motivated by the bigotry, but I honestly don't believe that that is really the primary motivating factor behind most people who support Trump.
Yeah. So to clarify, you weren't trying to get him reelected?
Um, I no, obviously that wasn't our strategy. On the far left, um, our strategy, and this has to be our strategy because they block us from being on the ballot. Um, Campaign funding is so tied up with the massive corporations that if you don't kowtow to them, you are not going to get elected. You're not even going to get on the ballot. You don't have a chance unless you're running in a very small race and have a ton of community support. Um, there's just no viable way for independent third party candidates to win. I mean, we saw that with someone like RFK, who had tens of millions of dollars to spend on ballot access and tons of name recognition, and he couldn't get on the ballot in enough states to even have a chance at the electoral college. So I mean, this isn't the only reason we run campaigns, not to win but to spread class consciousness and to present an alternate platform, from the one that Americans have been presented, which is two versions of the ruling class that differ mainly on wedge issues, but economically are very similar. I'm going to close this door so you could hear me a little better.
Oh,
But I can hear you.
hey, I had no idea that the door was an issue, but yeah, it struck me that she ran very far right wing, and it didn't seem like it was starting that way. They were coming out pretty strong at the very beginning, but it seems that Biden's advisors swarmed her and forced her, no, 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 you have to run to the right. You got to follow the same script we've been following for the past 32 years. And of course, that script is failing. It's they don't seem to understand that when it comes to a lot of people who don't vote or who vote third party, that if the third party candidate goes away, they're not suddenly getting those voters.
Yeah, and if you look at the numbers, the third party spoiler effect doesn't really pan out. But the thing is, so which is it? Is the left such a massive political force that we've been throwing all the elections for Democrats for decades now? Which, if we are, they should be tailoring their campaign to account for that. Or are we so pointless that there's no reason to even think about the issues we raise? We can just do whatever we want to Gaza. We can keep the minimum wage at $7.25 for a generation, and everything else that they do. I mean, it's like we're Schrodinger's left, where we're so strong that we mess everything up, but we're so weak that they don't need to, do anything to actually consider our votes. No, mind you, I am not saying that should be the Democrats' strategy. I don't really care about the Democrats' strategy beyond, how it affects the United States. Obviously, that it does affect me, but my goal is not to influence them or drag them to the left. That's never been our strategy. What we need is an independent socialist party, a working class party that can't be bought out by corporations and isn't influenced by the same things that the Democratic Party is obviously subject to.
Yeah, we froze up for a little bit in there, but I think we got the gist. Um, it strikes me that the big thing that happened is a lot fewer votes were cast this time.
Yep.
Trump still got all his voters, or most of his voters. He may have actually lost votes since last time.
I think he did,
yeah.
I could be wrong. I don't quote on that.
The core base of Democratic voters voted. The people that the Democrats could court didn't vote. They didn't seem to pick up any moderates or any significant number of these, swing voters that they think are going to shape the election, because there's not many of them, and they vote on the stupidest ass things ever. I'm sure you've seen a few clips here and there of these swing voters, these undecided voters in the last minutes. And I remember hearing a woman say, well, one candidate has its pros and its cons, and the other candidate has pros and cons. What to do? When you have somebody that's stupid, you will randomly get their vote. Did you see Trump go reach out for them?
Well, and that's
he didn't, because it didn't make a difference.
So we have two parties that are both, one is lurching to the right and the other is following
lurching to the right.
Yeah, so we have two parties that are courting the same vote. Now, you don't have to know much about politics to realize maybe that's a bad strategy when the majority of Americans are independent voters. I mean, logically, you'd think maybe an independent candidate could win, but they know very well that the system is set up that can't happen. But the logical thing,
unlikely to happen.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I think they honestly would not allow it to happen. If we did do everything right, we got on the ballot and we elected like a revolutionary socialist to office, I think they would use the law or even force to block that. I mean, look at what they did with Eugene Debs, But I mean, I don't want to get into the weeds of conspiracy. I will say that whenever any far left movement has gotten any traction, their leaders tend to die and they tend to go to prison. And if you don't believe in free speech as a leftist, I'm not sure why that is, because those laws tend to hurt us more, and political repression is always targeted at us. So
That does tend to be the case. I mean, they let literal enemy combatants more or less walk away. They slapped a
yeah.
few of them on the wrist, but they got a few months in prison.
The
Um,
majority of deaths and violence from terrorism is from the far right, but that is not where the majority of the crackdowns tend to be. And
yep,
I think I don't have
they
to
come
explain why that
after us.
is.
One, I remember back in 2020, uh, that one guy killed a Nazi, and
Yeah,
the
that was
police
like one of the
came and
last
just gunned
far
him
left.
down. And Trump practically said they did what I told them to do. That he ordered this guy to be just shot, just gunned down instead of put on trial.
Yeah, and it isn't just the Republicans. The Democrats, it really does seem, as far as leadership, they would rather capitulate with a fascist than take one step left. And that's the thing. What do they always brag about when we're talking about we want to heal the country, we want to bring everybody together, and they have branded themselves as the anti-Trump party, as the, I mean, for a while they were kind of leaning into the we have to fight against fascism, although they're very nebulous about what that is. They just mean Trump, the threat is far beyond Trump. But then, in the same breath, they'll talk about how they're reaching across the aisle and working with Cheney and getting the Cheney endorsement, and they're just as fond of war. And we see every time a Democrat gets elected, the anti-war movement kind of suffers, because centrists don't want to protest war when Democrats do it, unfortunately.
Yeah,
So
remember back 20 years ago where their big thing was we all had to vote for Democrats because we couldn't let Bush and Cheney win.
mhm.
And now we got Bush and Cheney on our side, and they didn't move any far left. Well,
No,
Cheney
if
may
anything,
have, because he was very big on the unitary
executive
goddamn
unitary
executive
executive. Yep.
unitary executive theory, which Trump is taking, all the way through to down to being immune for prosecution. But I think Cheney's like worried that his lesbian daughter will be killed.
Um, I mean, I think there is a bit of a civil, not a civil war. That's not the right. There's a dispute in the ruling class right now over whether they want to go full fascism or stick with the neoliberalism for a while. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm obviously not privy to their conversations or dinner events or parties that they go to, but we do see that shaking out a bit. And this is something I don't know. I've heard from some Marxists that we don't really have to worry about. Shouldn't say that. I got to say this very carefully. Capitalists will not cede to fascism until they need to prevent a far left uprising. Now, the U.S. I don't know if I'm just terribly misinformed about the far left in the U.S., but as far as I'm seeing it, I don't think we're anywhere near a communist revolution in the U.S. Yet we obviously see this very real push towards fascism, and there's many people who have described this in ways better than I can. But I mean, ultimately, capitalism has to keep growing. Is facing all these threats that it has no way of dealing with, like climate change. Capitalism cannot deal with that. You can't sell it as I mean, they could try to sell it as a consumer product, but it's not going to help climate change. I mean, there's some like carbon tax ideas, and even that's not a capitalist solution. That's a state under capitalism solution.
That's a carbon laundering scheme.
Yeah, I mean, it is still the state doing it. It's not the free market. But I don't believe that we can go to fascism even if there's not the threat of far left revolution. And I think the reason is they're starting to cannibalize the state, and they know they're destabilizing a lot of the mechanisms that keep working people's lives at least a little more bearable. Well, I mean, there's so many things going on. I think one of the reasons they're looking at immigration and border policy so closely is because they know that we are going to see influxes of climate refugees and war refugees now. And that's something that they want to prepare for. They want they want citizenry to, first of all, they want the laws in place and kind of like the structure in place to make sure that they don't have to accept any of these refugees. And they want us kind of primed to dehumanize them. Not that they need an excuse to hate on immigrants, but I think that might be one of the theories. But I don't know. Like, I'm not into the big picture, like they are doing this on purpose. I think it is actually the nature of capitalism to do this, and some people kind of pull strings here and there. And you see it especially in politics. But most of this, I think, is not some plan. It's just the way the mechanisms of capitalism at work.
Yeah, we definitely have a lot going on there. You think that they more interested in stopping climate change based on that? How many of them can actually have their hands in the oil industry?
Yeah, well, we see it with the tariffs. Obviously, some industries would be very hurt by these tariffs and do not want this protectionism. Economically, I don't see how this would. I mean, it's just an additional tax. It's first of all, it's regressive. It's going to hurt the poorest the most, which is one reason they support it. But it's also going to be economically devastating, which I am not crying tears for the capitalist economy. I'm just aware of who is going to be most hurt by that.
Well, under Trump, yeah, it's good. That's the way it's going to go. But I don't think tariffs are automatically that way by any means. Imagine this: what if we had tariffs based on environmental and labor laws in these various countries?
You're right.
You
You're right.
have an index, and you charge more for China because they pay their labor shit, overwork them, and they don't take care of the environment. But you have someone like France that does better than us, and you actually give them a break and subsidize their goods.
Yeah, I should clarify. I'm talking about the tariffs as Trump is describing them, and I generally think the capitalists that are reacting with a lot of apprehension towards this policy are right in their predictions of how it's going to affect their industries. And tariffs. I mean, the thing is, as socialists, we're often asked to fix the problems of capitalism, which obviously the structure we're operating under isn't ideally a capitalist one. We want to go more towards economic democracy, where workers have the control and the state has less control of our lives, as well as capitalism. But realistically, we do have to have opinions on these policies. But I mean, it is kind of unfair, I think, to expect us to fix capitalism for capitalism's sake, because that's not what we want to do. And ultimately, we want a mass movement of workers internationally. So we don't see ourselves as competing against workers in China. We see ourselves as in solidarity with workers in China.
With the workers, yeah, not with the Chinese government by any means, though. Because goddamn, if they are not capitalists, is all hell.
Yeah, I'm always on the side of. I mean, I tend to lean more anarcho-communist, so I'm always on the side of the workers, and I'm very skeptical of the state, even one that proclaims to be socialist or for the workers. I'm kind of worried that I'm presenting things like my opinions as Socialist Party platform. I don't mean to do that. A lot of this commentary is just kind of my own opinion, so I just want to clarify that.
I think you're off the clock at this point.
Yeah, I don't even know what our platform says on China, but I don't imagine I'm whatever I'm saying is all that disagreeable with it. Well, I do know. I don't think we mentioned China and tariffs specifically. That would be kind of specific for the platform.
Yeah, I don't think we mentioned any country. The only country that I think we have anything specific on is Israel, and of course Palestine, because that is a country. And maybe we have something on Ukraine at this point. I don't know if you
not the
just have
platform.
statements or if that's in the platform.
Well, yeah, statements on specific conflicts usually wouldn't go on the platform because it's more of a broad-based thing rather than something that you put about put things about current events in. I mean, generally, we're on the side of the workers, not NATO and not Russia. And generally, workers lose when we have to take sides in that. Obviously, we're against U.S. imperialism, but speaking of Russia, I have so we floated this idea of having a kind of a political Razzie Award. And we didn't end up going through with it, but unfortunately, the Kremlin did not get that memo. And we did have what are they, Red MAGA? What do they call themselves?
MAGA communists.
MAGA communists. Okay, so we do have the Kremlin did actually send us some gifts just in case they won this award. And I'm not sure what to do with them, but they are very helpful. So first of all, if you're familiar with polonium, we do have a Geiger counter. Now, as a scientist, I want to caution you that this does not measure ionizing radiation, and so it's not a great idea to drink tea just because you scanned it with this. If it's poisoned with polonium, I don't think this would have much of an effect. But there's that. There is also a window harness, so you don't get pushed on any windows, although it is broken. So I just, maybe not the best protection. And I also have a exemption letter to the draft of the Russian Federation, but it's only good for 2 weeks. So keep that in mind. And if someone wants to claim these, I'll be happy to send them out. I just want to warn you, I don't think any of these are going to be all that helpful if you're planning on being in Russia anytime soon.
Who won those?
That's the thing. We didn't. It was the MAGA communists, but we didn't end up having the awards. I think we got to pull it off next year. So,
all of them.
Yeah. Well, if anyone wants to claim any of these things, they can be my guest. I just advise them. I don't think they are going to be very effective at avoiding assassination if you do say or post or do the wrong thing or try to lead a coup or try to avoid dying in Ukraine. It's probably not going to help you.
I'm not sure MAGA communists are too concerned about saying the wrong thing for Putin. They just
he's got a bit of a reach.
They love Russia.
He's got a bit of a reach. If he seems to be very vengeful towards those that go against him. At least if they still have some power. I don't know how much power MAGA communism has, but I will say that I don't know we are seeing a general rightward trend in the U.S. I am hoping that the left doesn't follow this. I mean, the far left is generally ride or die. That's why the fascists target us first, generally, because they know there's nothing they could do to win us over. But you could kind of tell in times like this who's real and who isn't. And I have to say, it's kind of sickening to see marginalized people get thrown under the bus. Like, if I were going to form a communist group, I would be embarrassed if my founding picture was all guys, Because, there's a saying, and I think it generally holds true, is, nothing cool is only guys. Like, if you have something cool, women are going to want in on that. And that's definitely true for politics. If there's no women in your group, then... And, of course, more so with trans people and immigrants. I'm not surprised by the Democrats. I don't want to draw attention to the specific incident because I think it was kind of put forward as propaganda for the Democrats. But hearing someone on the left that I did have respect for talk about trans people as if they were intruders in women's sports and speak about abortion ban or that like the government has any reason to ban healthcare. I mean, like, I guess as a leftist, it strikes me that you should always be wary of government banning things and government making policies on um, complicated and hot button issues.
What you're talking
So
about is class essentialists. Class
I would say
essentialists.
class reductionists are the most reactionary. I mean, class essentialism, I could see that. I mean, I'm critical of liberal feminism and like identity politics feminism for all the reasons it is. I mean, you can't have feminism without class consciousness. I don't know.
Yeah, what they miss though, which if it's class reductionists or class essentialists, um, they're worried. They understand their own oppression, but they don't care about other people's oppression.
Yeah, to me,
They
it's
don't. They
almost like,
can't build a group that way, because if
yeah,
you're not looking out for one another with everything, you you start abandoning this group or that group, thinking you're going to get some sort of political gain. You just lost the trust of everybody.
yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, in a way, I guess I should be grateful that we kind of see their true colors, even though we're kind of hurting for numbers. We need more people on the far left. Um, but at the same time, this is why anyone who has faced marginalization is going to be mistrustful. I mean, I understand it, and it's really disappointing. And one thing I've always said, like when I do work in locals, if we're going to go to like a Black Lives Matter event or anti-ICE event, I want to make clear we are there because we support the cause. We're going to do what we can to help, but we're not there to convert people. We're there because they are behind a cause we support. And if they're going to be behind the cause we support in like a capitalist way, then we're probably not going to support them. But as long as they have a good intention and they have class consciousness, we're going to support them. And I really don't like this idea that you have to go into these community groups and you have to radicalize everyone and convert them and get them to join the party. It's like that really shouldn't be the point of what you're doing. I understand strategically that might make sense, but I think the better way to do it is build a party where they want to come to you and work within your party. Don't
Mhm.
infiltrate what they're already building. I mean, if you should be leading them, why are you going to their events? If you have all the answers, shouldn't you be the one organizing the events, or shouldn't they be organizing within your group? And that's what I've always hoped to build within the Socialist Party is because we are socialism from below, because we are multi-tendency. um, I hope we can build a group where people struggling for a variety of issues can come and work in a way where they have national support for local movements. But if I could effectively do that, I mean, it's a tough thing to do. We've been trying to do it for many years, so I don't have all the answers. I just think that's the best way to go about it.
Yeah, I think that just being there and being involved is enough that they're going to look into what you're doing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But I think you have to come out. You have to show that you do support them and you do actually care about these issues, regardless of whether or not it benefits you politically.
Hmm.
Um, and I think in times like this, we do kind of see people true colors when they. It's like, well, maybe. I mean, I'm sure you've heard it too. The idea is like, we'll get around to women's liberation and we'll get around to equality for everybody. But first, we have to get rid of capitalism. It's like, socialism would drastically improve all these issues, but we had bigotry before capitalism, and we will have it after capitalism if we're not careful and if we don't build a movement dedicated to eliminating all these forms of hierarchy and oppression. And I mean, we have these problems within our own groups. So why would we believe that they'll just magically disappear? It just seems
Yeah,
so
and
kind
there's a lot of
of.
reductionism too, where people seem to think that any capitalist government must be racist, it must be sexist. I mean, sexism you probably had beforehand, but racism was created within the capitalist stages. It's not a pre-capitalist thing that got carried over by any means. Capitalism has actively existed without racism. Uh,
I mean, I think I would say it isn't so much that I'm definitely not an expert on the origins of racism. I mean, I definitely know about the roots of colonialism and white supremacy, but I think capitalism is always going to use whatever tools it can to divide people. That doesn't mean that capitalism has to be racist. I think it just ends up being racist because it is such a strategic, um,
divisive tool.
yeah. I mean, I think, but it isn't as if it's in the nature of capitalism itself, other than to divide people, which racism is going to achieve that. And I mean, and that's another reason. Like I'm also an IWW member, and the IWW was, for a long time, most unions were segregated, and the IWW was definitely one of the most radical movements, and also was integrated. And I think that's one reason they were very effective early on, is because they didn't let this divide them. And if we're not careful, we're going to make the same mistakes. We're gonna say, I mean, it's not only a moral mistake just to give up your dedication to human rights and to the struggles of marginalized people. It's also a strategic mistake, because the most marginalized tend to be the most radical, because they have the least to lose and the most to gain. And
Hmm.
of course, that also puts people in the position where they could be cannon fodder. So I don't want to overstate the case. And the
There has
goal,
been so much talk over the past decades whenever you go against the Democratic Party. Oh, you're so privileged that you can go with, that you can afford a Trump presidency, or before that a Romney presidency, or whatever the case may be.
well, I can't
But
afford a Biden presidency either, though.
yeah, a whole lot of super marginalized people do not go out. They didn't turn out for Kamala. That's why it looks like you have Latinos and black men moving over to Trump, because the Latinos and black men stayed home.
But
You know,
they are still, I think the only majority Trump carried was white people. I mean, that's the thing. They complain that marginalized people aren't turning out for the Democrats, but they are actually some of the most reliable voters for Democrats. So not only are they not helping the people they claim to represent, but that's their base. And like, even just numbers wise, they should be helping them.
they just assume, they take them for granted.
Yeah,
That
and
is
that's
the
the thing, that if
problem,
you blindly vote Democrat, you always will be taken for granted. And
because
I
you are for granted.
yeah.
You're
I mean, they are a party of the ruling class. They might want equality of oppressors. They might want some of the oppressors to be black. I would say, maybe this is a little too cynical, but I would say maybe they're just saying that to have a message that appeals to more voters. Because if we're going to have a choice between two capitalist parties, they have to do something to differentiate each other. But ultimately, they're not for ending the status quo. And I think we're always going to have these divisions under capitalism because it needs them. It doesn't mean that the people who are marginalized are always going to be the same people, but it's always going to be someone. And it always could be you. So that's why you shouldn't support these systems, even if you're at the top right now.
I don't think it so much needs them, or as much as it's useful.
Yeah.
Because if you start getting somebody pushing for workers' rights a lot, you can always silence it by saying, "Oh, we're gonna stop the discrimination against this group. We're gonna stop the discrimination against that group instead," because what they have a material interest in is worker exploitation. They don't have a material interest in racism or sexism or homophobia. But if you can build up those things too, that whenever the workers are about to make an advance, you throw something else out, and it's a way to distract.
Well, if you've noticed, I'm sure you have, like I have, that when the media and when we hear about the struggles of men, and I don't discount them. I don't deny that men struggle under patriarchy. But when they're described, or like when a man, like when there's an act of like a mass shooting or something, um, men falling behind as far as college enrollment, the question is always how did we fail men, rather than if women were falling behind in enrollment, it would have been like, oh, see, women just don't belong in college. Nothing you can do. Nothing we can do. They should have known. But whenever it's men struggling, they seem to get a lot more sympathy. And I'm not saying that men shouldn't get sympathy. In a lot of ways, I think men are in this weird position where they have to be tough and they can't show emotion or weakness, yet you know, they're there's all this expected of them, and they're expected to fit this mold. They have to give up all this to fit this mold. But colleges have actually started giving preferential treatment to men, and no one's going to Supreme Court. Like, no, as far as I know, no woman's went to the Supreme Court and said, you know, this man got the spot that I deserve just because he's a man. Because I mean, the gender balance really is getting drastic in colleges now. I don't know the way to solve it. I don't think we can necessarily have.
I think I know the problem.
Well, I know the problem, yeah, but as far as like solving it under neoliberal capitalism, as long
But
as
what do you think the problem is? What causes it?
Well, for gender issues, I mean, it's going to be patriarchy. It's going to be alienation under capitalism, and men especially are being directed at as far as falling wages, and you know, the additional expectation that that women don't have as much as far as their value being tied to their job. Now, women's value is tied to a lot of messed up things, but not as much to their job. So when men face unemployment, I mean, I don't claim to speak for men.
Let me run this by you.
Sure.
Okay, it comes down to the trades. The trades are very, very male-centric. They have the opposite gender bias. And when you have people who are going to recruit for the trades, they're going to be looking at men that they're trying to pull out. And the trades make a lot of good money right now because they're self-employed for the most part. They are able, you know, you're able to just get a few tools. You know, it's not a huge capital cost. You get a few tools. You're able to go to work for yourself, and you're getting the full value of your labor. Whereas people who go to college, they generally go get employed, and they're getting a fraction of the value of their labor. So there's some, you know, there is a reason that men would want these trade jobs. I don't have to study hard. I can just, you know, do 6 months, a year, and then I'm good to go. And I can make good money because I can charge people through the roof.
Well, I think the trades tend to be they're more likely to be unionized as well, which could be one reason they tend to pay a little better.
I'm talking about people like, you know, handymen.
Oh, like independent contractors,
plumbers, electricians that work on the, not the industrial ones, the ones who you called your house.
I mean, we've seen
$50 to diagnose the problem that you told them over the phone.
I don't claim to be an economist. We have seen a transition to more service-based economies. College degrees are not any guarantee of. I mean, even I work in my field, and I'm barely scraping by.
What is your field?
I'm a biochemist, and it's not like I'm even, as far as my job, it's not even like I'm making horrible money, but my rent is, and I have the cheapest apartment I have a studio. It overlooks Highway 35. It's, you know, it's everything I need. I can't control the heat in it, but otherwise it's all right. It's the cheapest I could find within walking distance to my work, so I don't have to drive. And it's 43% of my income, and that's the best I can do. You know, unless I'm going to be paying for parking and commuting and all that, and that would, and that's not unusual. And it's getting, and that's the thing. I'm in STEM. If you're going to like liberal arts, humanities, it's so much worse. My ex-husband looked for a job in with a classics degree for ages, and They're getting rid of tenure, which, it is going to affect academia a lot, because that is one thing that ensures professors, for better or worse, they can speak their mind and teach how they choose without fear of as much reprisal. I mean, there's limitations to everything, but it seems like, I remember someone said this is like a crisis of everything, because everything seems to be failing. And you kind of see the cards fall where you would expect them to. You see that, alienated men are blaming women, and white people are blaming immigrants, and everyone's kind of sinking back into their tribes. And I'm really hoping that the left can offer something different, where we offer solidarity, we offer hope, we offer things that don't involve hating other people. Because it's not that I hate capitalists, and capitalists is not like an immutable characteristic. But if your actions are evil, I'm going to, call a spade a spade. But a capitalist doesn't have to be a capitalist. There's nothing about being a capitalist that they can't change. If they want, they can give their capital assets over to the workers to control democratically. So I think we do offer.
You hit on something there. With the Democrats, where they really lost a lot of stuff is that they insisted that the economy is doing great. Everybody's doing great. You're doing better than you realize you're doing, et cetera, et cetera. They're looking at metrics like unemployment. People are working full time and they can't pay their bills. So having low unemployment isn't necessarily good, especially when a lot of that is because people can't find jobs and they fall off the rolls.
Yeah.
Trump actually had that right in 2016, but when he was president, he steered away from it because it would affect him and his high unemployment rate.
Well, and that's the thing. They can't attack the actual problem, because the problem is capitalism. Like they can't talk about how
much does a strong stock market help you?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. I don't know if there really was a great way to win this for them, unless they
if they ran to the left. If they ran like FDR, went back to their roots.
They can't, though. They can't. They are so reliant on those corporate donors. They literally cannot do that. They would lose all their donors. So unless they find a way to hack the Supreme Court and overturn Citizens United, and I mean, they are in a very unenviable position, and as are we, because we're going to keep going to the right if they can't find a way to win. I'm hoping that what arises out of this is an independent left that is so they just can't ignore us, that our demands are that severe or that loud, that we're saying, look, we need an economy that works for us. Because I mean, eventually Trump supporters are going to realize that none of his promises panned out. If the economy stays bad under the Republicans, they're going to have the same problem. But a lot of things can happen between now and then. So I wouldn't, put my hopes on that. I'm just going to say, like, historically, you fight fascism from the left. You don't fight fascism by moving right. The way fascists get power, the way they move the Overton window, is by slowly tugging and hoping that enough people follow them. Not everyone has to, but enough people have to. And it's unfortunate, and I can't say that I'm surprised, but that seems to be effective so far. But at the same time, I think it's inevitable that a strong left is going to come out of this, especially when no one is catering to that area of the political spectrum anymore.
Well, I think that Trump's going to have a lot of hiccups early on this time around. And that's because one of the big things they're trying to do is tax federal workers. And they specifically focused in on the Social Security Administration. If you remember back in 2023, it was voted the worst place to work in the federal government. They can't hold on to their workers. They hire new people and they leave before they finish their training because they don't want to deal with it. They're attacking them, saying, hey, we want all these workers who are doing telework. We want them all to go back 5 days a week into the office. you're at a point now that if they do that, it's not going to be a striking issue because federal employees can't strike.
Yeah.
But so many of them are going to just straight up quit.
But are you sure that's not what they want? Because what they're trying to do is to dismantle things like Social Security, and that might give them just the excuse they're looking for. And
I think you're going to have rioting in the streets when people can't get their money, when people can't process their claims timely. And I think Trump's going to have a huge issue, and it may, I don't know exactly how that's going to pan out.
I mean, he may just give it over to a private company to handle, which is, again, what they want is to privatize it. And if people are getting their checks, they might not fight it as much. I'm just worried. I mean,
they're not going to get their checks with a private company. Private companies cannot handle that kind of work. I'll tell you that. Not without a huge amount of overhead. This could cost way more than the federal employees cost. It's under 1% overhead for Social Security.
Oh, I don't deny that it's going to be more expensive if they privatize.
Yeah, you want to have a 25% overhead. Sure, but people are going to complain through the roof over that because they're going to have to cut benefits at that point.
Oh, I don't think they.
And there's going to be huge unrest. He's not going to get past it like that. The question is, how is that going to affect the fascists? That kind of unrest in the streets. That's what I'm wondering.
I don't, and that's the thing. If that unrest is not more focused, if it is really just reactionary based on we're not getting our checks, therefore we're rioting, we're not getting our checks, and this is part of a bigger system, and these are the changes we demanded. I don't know if that unrest is going to be all that effective, and he might just put it down. And I don't know. I don't have answers to this. It's not like we're in uncharted territory. We know how fascism works. I mean, obviously our situation is a lot different than, Italy in the 30s and 40s or any other fascist experiments, I guess we could call them.
Iraq in the 1990s.
I mean, I don't know much about Saddam. I know he was a secular, and he was secular.
The Ba'ath is a fascist party, a pan-Arabist fascist party. It's not just Iraq. They were there in Syria and other Arab nations, but they got power in Iraq. And yeah, Saddam was a fascist that we were allied to for a good long while.
I mean, I believe we were allied with the Taliban as well, but
true, against the Russians.
But I mean, about the parts of Project 2025 and how they are looking to replace all civil service workers with people who are willing to
Party
swear.
loyalist.
Yeah. Have you watched any of those?
To Trump, personally.
Yeah. Have you watched any of those training videos?
I have seen a couple. Yeah, they're really, really bad and incredibly stupid.
They're boring, but they're scary and they're boring. It's like I never expected fascism to be so boring.
The stupidity of them is what strikes me. That they really have no idea what they're talking about at all.
Well, I think you have to remember the audience. This is not propaganda. This is supposed to be a training video. People who are supposed to think that they're acting in good faith, and all these are just not to consolidate power, but they just want to return America to conservative values. Which going backwards is not actually conservative values. That's
conservatives are the Democrats at this point.
Yeah.
Ever since 2016. I wrote in 2018 that the Democrats are conservative, the Republicans are reactionary or fascist. That is the actual ideology they mean. We have this big problem in America where we decided that the Democrats are liberal and the Republicans are right, and then the parties just move to the right, and we just keep using that term. Joe Biden is not a liberal. Kamala Harris is not a liberal. These are conservatives.
Yeah,
that's why
they're neoliberals. but they're not. They're neoliberals, but they're not. They're definitely nowhere near the left, and they will continue to keep going right. And I understand that there's people.
I don't think they are neoliberals. They are conservatives who are tied to neoliberalism.
But I mean, no,
Conservatism is always tied to another ideology.
I mean, Reagan was a neoliberal. And Thatcher was like Reagan and Thatcher are the neoliberals. You know,
The big
I'm not
one, yeah.
And they're actually having some problems with they're doing shock doctrine again in South America. I think it's Argentina where they have the Captain Capitalism guy.
Yeah, like Bill Clinton is a neoliberal.
Yeah. Oh,
he
yeah.
believed in the idea of neoliberalism. But people like Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, they're not neoliberals. They're conservatives who are conserving a neoliberal existence. They don't care which way it goes. They care that it goes slowly, whichever way. That we have.
I think I know what you're saying.
Acting civilly to one another and all that, because it's about the social fabric.
I think I see what you're saying now.
Yeah, like in the Soviet Union, after it fell, the conservatives were the ones who wanted to undo the Soviet system slowly and carefully, because that's what conservatism called for.
Gotcha. Okay. You know, I heard the best, and by the best I mean the worst argument about how the Soviet Union proved that under the right form of Leninism that the state would wither away, because the Soviet Union falling was an example of the state withering away. And I'm like, okay, so the state's
quickly replaced by a whole bunch of oligarchic states.
Yeah, it's like, is that what Engels meant? Is it's going to wither away and we're going to get the Russian Federation?
Now, what drives me even more nuts is when you talk about tankies, they don't read Lenin.
I don't know if this was even a tank. It
might
have been a troll, but that was a wild argument there.
Now, Lenin, when he took power, he did not believe that you could have socialism in Russia. He followed Marx. Marx had suggested at some point that a revolution in the West could spread into Russia and pull Russia through capitalism.
You froze. Oh no. I don't know if it's your internet or mine, but you froze.
Yeah, I just thought, oops, connection lost, reconnecting.
Okay.
Damn CIA.
Oh, well, I'm glad you gave us the secret of revolution. Unfortunately, I couldn't hear it. But
okay. But he believed that you could have the whole point was they're going to have they had the revolution, they had a holdover till there was that revolution in the West. So he undid everything and he put in place what he called state capitalism. This was lesser than socialism, of course, lesser than communism, but lesser than socialism. And he was trying to explain how he had not betrayed the revolution by doing it in the taxing kind. Yet that's exactly what Stalin called socialism in one country. And these damn tankies keep trying to say, no, it's socialism there. You didn't read your fucking Lenin, because Lenin explained that it's not fucking socialism. It's something that they created to make themselves ready when the Soviets could be pulled through capitalism and become socialist.
I hope you always speak your mind, and that is something I really appreciate about you. One thing I want to add, though, so we have a study group every Thursday. If anyone's out there is interested, it's leftunitystudy.com. Although if like anything Veronica said just really made you angry, maybe, I don't know, maybe show up. Kind of depends why you're angry, I guess. But so we did do state and well, good. There's a lot to be angry about. I think maybe it's the Minnesotan in me. I tend to be a little more diplomatic. I probably should be less so. But so anyway, because of my skepticism, eternal skepticism of the state, I often get when I ask about, you know, I'm skeptical that the state would just wither away. I think that's not generally how power works. And I know it's like this would be a situation where the state doesn't necessarily have any purpose, but as long as it has the power, has any power, it's going to work to consolidate it. But anyway, so we did State and Revolution in that group, and a longtime comrade actually made me a certificate that certifies that I have read State and Revolution, because everyone always tells me read State and Revolution. It's like, and it's annoying to me because it's like, okay, I'm asking you about what you believe, and I'm saying like, okay, so this is what I don't get. Like, why? How do you know that this is the way things would happen? And they just like, well, just read that book. It's like, I have read that book. Why can't you answer the question? It's kind of like the people who say, you know, go read the Bible. It just strikes me as like orthodoxy for orthodoxy's sake, and it's like,
It is. My dissertation, I plan on unturning a whole shitload of things that people believe already.
that's good. That's
And
what dissertation should do
yeah,
a lot of the time.
but I'm going to tell you, I'm going to have a lot of shit in there that is going to be wrong, and no one's going to know it's wrong for 100 years. And that's what's good. You know,
That's kind of a risk, though, don't you think?
what do you mean that's a risk?
Well, because some people could use but you don't know what's wrong yet, right? Is that
Yeah,
what you're
I
saying?
don't know what's wrong.
Oh, okay, because I was like, if you're going to put stuff that you know is wrong,
I
that you
don't.
don't
Yeah,
know
I don't
yet.
know it's wrong, but there's going to be stuff that's wrong. And same thing applied to Lenin. Same thing applied to Marx. They put in things that were wrong. They got a whole lot of right things, but it's not perfect. You can't
Yeah,
just go say 100 years later, read this book that explains everything about my political philosophy, because that means you haven't adjusted to reality. You haven't analyzed how things have played out. You,
yeah. Well, and it
you
also shows like it is kind of a blind adherence to ideology. I mean, I can't imagine, like, unless someone just didn't have a grasp of a concept, I can't imagine answering questions just like, well, just read this book. I would like at least try to summarize it. But it is kind of a thing, and it's a problem on the left. I think we have to be unequivocal in our support of democracy and human rights, and I do believe in the threat that even the best meaning socialists can get into power and honestly want to have like a workers' paradise, but power does corrupt people. That's not a facet of capitalism. Being in power, you do get separated from the everyday lives of the people you have power over, and you could see genuine criticism as bourgeois attacks that have to be put down. But I just can't resist asking you, because I always ask people this: what's your take on Kronstadt?
okay? Now you had pointed out to me, I think it was just yesterday, what that's referring to, and I've heard of the thing before. We're talking about the the ideology of Silicon Valley right now, that the tech bros, where they went super far right wing.
I want to see where you're going with this now. You
Yeah,
definitely got my attention.
no, they are fucking nuts. They really have no concept of how society works, how people work.
Yeah.
They know how tech works 20 years ago before they became executives. Because they don't know, like, you think Elon Musk knows what's going on? You saw where he's
No,
pulling
it's very
wires
obvious.
out of random.
Yeah, he does not understand. He's not an engineer. He's not an inventor. He's not a programmer.
But he's the Kronstadt person. That's who he is. No, you're not, your average programmer is less likely to be involved in this kind of stuff.
But
And a
the
lot
people
of
at
that probably
Kronstadt were workers, though.
timing.
They genuinely were workers, and they
They
were
may
actually.
have been workers, but the
So
point
it seems
being,
like in your analogy, it would be better if the Kronstadt people were like Elon Musk supporters rather than the tech bros themselves, because that would at least they could.
no, I'm basically just mocking people like Elon Musk, that they're not really tech people.
You know where I fall on Kronstadt, though, right?
Yeah, I assume. Yeah, I would imagine, because they're fucking fascists.
No,
Their whole transhumanism and all that.
I don't think
It's very
that they
Nietzschean.
were loyal to fascists. I think they were genuinely workers who had grievances, legitimate grievances under war communism that were put down violently. I am against the repression of the Kronstadt.
Holy shit! I think I'm talking about the wrong thing. Then
Yeah,
you were now. Okay. Oh God.
it is a very
Yeah.
niche thing. So
There's
I don't like
guys.
even people who are really into USSR history are kind of like what.
Yeah,
So
you're
yeah,
telling me about something different yesterday that's very similar. Test.
oh yeah, oh yeah, that acronym and it is actually similar. Okay, I know what you're
That's what I
talking
was
about
thinking of.
now.
I gotta look
Oh,
up Kronstadt again.
I'm talking about yeah. I was wondering why you were bringing that up. Okay, the thing Veronica is talking about is the ideology behind like Peter Thiel and Elon Musk. There's an acronym. It's like transhumanism and something
Cosmism. Where they go to
cosmism.
space.
Yeah. Okay, I see now. Okay. No, Kronstadt is something entirely different. That's why I was like,
Oh,
I don't know where you're going with this, but it's interesting. I was not sure how you're going to tie that together. I'm kind of disappointed. I thought you were really going to tie that to
Kronstadt. Is
Kronstadt.
this about soldiers or navy men overthrowing their leaders?
It was a rebellion that was put down early on. I mean, it was painted as possibly being well, I mean, the people that I mean, they were Soviet workers. They genuinely were Soviet workers who had grievances. Whether or not outside forces were taking advantage of those grievances, I can't say. I don't know if anyone can legitimately say, but I think they were acting in good faith. Some people might disagree. But to me, if they were really on the side of fascists, like why would they be on the side of fascists as Soviets, especially Soviet workers? It doesn't make any sense. Um, I don't know. I've heard a lot of excuses for Kronstadt. I can understand that. I don't have. I have the benefit of hindsight, and tough decisions had to be made to prepare to defeat Nazi Germany. But
Well, I am a political theorist, not a historian, so I'm not looking at every little event, and I'm not obsessed with the Soviet Union like tankies are.
it's not just tankies, though. The left seems to have a lot of. I mean, we should learn from the Soviet Union, and
Yeah,
painting
but
everything is bad.
you
I
don't
mean, they
need
did.
to know everything inside and out about the Soviet Union.
Yeah,
I
they
know
did
enough to know
achieve a
what the
lot, but
is.
yeah, that's definitely not a huge area of expertise for me. I know a little more about the theory and less about the history. Um,
Yeah, I think that's what we need to know more than anything is what socialism is so that we can create it, not try to recreate the goddamn Soviet Union.
well, not make the same mistakes, obviously, but I don't know if we're going to get an opportunity like the Soviet Union anytime soon. I mean, I'm a little more concerned with things like um, the Zapatistas and Verhova. I mean, I think there's still socialist experiments going on. Um, I just tend to be skeptical of state power in general, especially in some place like the U.S. I think if we are going to build class consciousness here, we are probably going to be more relevant if we take a less friendly view of the government. First of all, because we're talking about the U.S. government, you know, um, one of the biggest sources of death and destruction and genocide in like history. I mean, the Brits can give us a run for our money. Obviously, they got a little bit of a head start, but genuine Americans generally don't like a lot of government interference with their lives. They've been propagandized to think things like abortion restrictions and all the tax breaks for the wealthy are actually beneficial or whatever, but that is a general theme. And I think the fact that we're one of the only political groups that actually represents self-government by working people. It seems like maybe we're not leaning into that enough to get our due, but I don't know.
I think the state is something that comes down to what the power structure is. In America, it's an oligarchic power structure. If you watch the video I put on right before this, it's me ranting at the end about how the United States is not a democracy. Democracy requires the people, the masses, to hold the ultimate power. You cannot be stuck in a situation where you got two bad candidates that no one likes in a democracy, because the people get to choose who's in charge, not oligarchs. If you're in a monarchy, you got a problem, because that's one person's will that's behind that state apparatus. But if you have a democracy, I'm not worried about the state overstepping anything, because people are very much capable of understanding what they want to actually do to their neighbors. I want to, though, yeah, I don't want your music so that it's shaking my walls at 3 a.m. That's perfectly fine. But they're not going to be going out saying, I don't approve of your sex life. That's coming from a completely different type of power structure, because people are very interested in their own rights, and they're worried only as far as it infringes on other people's rights. We talk about economic rights. The United States is the most free in the world for the bourgeoisie. For the average
Yeah,
person
of
like
course.
you and me, we're not very free.
Well,
We
yeah, if you don't have a place to stay and you can't afford your rent, you can't afford your food, and you can't get health care, I mean, you might be, I guess, free from government regulation, although, the government regulations that they fight aren't the ones that benefit us. They're the ones that limit
well,
the profits
they're
of corporations.
regulated. The homeless are regulated like hell. We have
Yeah,
anti-homeless
that's a good
architecture.
point. That's a very good point.
Yeah, we have no solution for homeless people at all. It's
Well, of
just,
course not.
we don't
It's
want to deal with
wasteful.
you. Die.
And when we have two parties that are beholden to the capitalist class, of course they can't. I mean, the Democrats really can't run a campaign where they talk about how um, these private equity firms are buying up all the housing. And historically, the way under capitalism working families can build wealth, and I want to make clear it isn't my goal to build the middle class or for working families to build wealth under capitalism to have a little more power. I want working people to have all the power and to get rid of the people at the top that they're supporting. But historically, the way that working families would build wealth was through home ownership, and private equity firms are buying all the housing stock, and they will make, unless someone stops them, they will make America a country of renters beholden to them because they own all the housing stock. And that's the thing that the solutions that people like Harris present are, oh, we need to build more houses. The problem is not that we don't have enough houses. The problem is that the people who need to live in them don't own them. They don't have the money to buy them, and that the people that do own them and have all the money are like a few people at the top. But they can't make that critique because those are the people funding their campaign.
But I think we learned from Bernie that you don't need to have rich people funding your campaign. If you give a good message, you can get enough $5, $10 donations from people who are willing to go without a little bit to make something happen. Though I think that, what happened to that money may have affected
He
that
might, he
willingness
wouldn't.
some. That's why you can't do that within the Democratic Party.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I don't know how he would have gotten on the ballot without the Democratic Party, but I also know the Democratic Party was they were going to use the super delegates and everything they could to stop him. I mean, I don't want to sound hopeless, like there's no point in trying. I just want to be clear that especially when it comes to national campaigns, our goal isn't to win. I don't think our goal should be to win at this point because, I mean, we need more class consciousness. The people who are saying we need a revolution now, I mean, that would be ideally, if we had a leftist revolution, that would be great. But I mean, look at where the U.S. is at. Is this really the time for revolution? Because I'm pretty sure you're going to end up with a fascist revolution with the amount of class consciousness we have in the U.S. Most people don't even know that socialism is an alternative to capitalism. They think that we're just the government controls everything, which is definitely not what I'm fighting for. And I don't know why any socialist would be for that. I guess you could say, well, it's a socialist government.
Right now,
That's
capital
not what we have here, though. So,
capital runs everything right now. They control everything. Capital tells you how you can cut your hair because you have to go work. They tell you, capital tells you now with all these gated communities with their what do you call it? Their the stupid groups that
the homeowners association.
Homeowners association. They're all private. They tell you how you can have your lawn cut, where you can put your trash, when you can take it out. Capital tells you what you can do with your body. Capital is that intrusive governance, because government is what government does. It doesn't have to be through the official state, because there's all these little there's a shadow state in a sense of capital's power that they exert over everyday people's lives, and they may not be able to do all the same things directly, but they can effectively force you into doing what they want.
Who drew your icon at the top right?
That is I am having such a brain parts at this point in the night. Paul Garner.
Oh, that's why I asked, because yeah, he did my
I promised him I would put him in my I would give that out in my Jefferson video, but I haven't gotten around to editing my goddamn Jefferson video. Oh,
I like how he drew me, because I actually look like me. You know, he didn't try to make me look like, I don't know, better than.
Where did I didn't see anything about merchandise.
Well, you have to talk to Matt Erard, because I sent your shirt to him. I will send you one of these signs too. I'll send you guys a couple signs. I can send it directly to you too if you want.
She went out now. Okay, you went out now. You're gonna send me one of, and I think you're gonna say the sign.
Oh, well, I'm trying to get to Detroit soon. I might be able just to bring it with me, but we'll see.
That'd be cool. But the
Is
thing
there anything fun happening in Detroit anytime soon?
What?
Is there anything fun
happening in Detroit?
Yeah.
Probably not.
I guess I won't visit then. Sorry. I guess there's just no reason to visit.
No, you gotta make the fun.
There's gonna be some reason to go there.
I'm not trying to dissuade you from coming. I'm just saying it is I do not keep up with events very much. My idea of fun is on Tuesday. I'm going to a presentation before class about what happened with the election.
I mean, it doesn't have to be like a concert
professors talk about it. It's like, okay.
I mean, I think your idea of fun is probably a lot more in line with my idea of fun. So I'm not talking about a concert or anything, but I do want to start doing a month. I don't know if I told you this. I was going to see if there's interest in doing a monthly movie night. So I don't know much about movies though, but I think it'd be kind of fun just to have a social outing kind of thing.
I think it'd be good. I still think that the party needs to have camping trips.
You got to talk to Josh Bradley, because he's been trying to organize one of those for a long time. I would go. I would go because it's a Socialist Party thing, and if it's a Socialist Party thing, I have to go. If we had church things that were like Socialist Party, I'd probably have to go to that too. Please don't do that.
I can't see.
But if you get it together, I will be there, and I will do my best.
There's protests that we attend as a party that maybe organized at a black church or something.
Oh yeah, that's
But
fine.
I
I mean,
don't
I've
think
been to
there's,
like events at churches, but I just hope that.
but I don't
Um,
think there's any actual church thing that's ever going to be a Socialist Party thing.
yeah, that would be kind of weird. Like, well, I mean, if members want to do that, they can do that, but I don't think we
I'm
endorse
one of
any
the few
specific
people in the
religion.
party who isn't an atheist.
There's tons of religious people in the party. I've been calling every member I can. I've called probably about 200 members. Most of them don't pick up, so I've only talked to like 24 maybe. But
Oh, I don't blame people for not picking up. I get so many spam calls.
oh, I thought you were saying because it was me. I'm like, geez, okay.
No, not because it's you, because they don't know it's you. They think it's some robotic voice that's going to try to trick them into giving their social security number.
Yeah, I hate that
Or
because
one of
and
the
I
damn.
have the customer service voice too, especially when I'm making calls, so they think I'm a.
But what really bothers me is that they have the ones that are silent and they're trying to record your voice so they can replicate your voice
I didn't know that was a thing.
using AI. Yeah. And so I often answer the phone now. Hello, who is this? Like that. If I don't know who it is, if it's a real person, they'll say something, and I'll know it's a real person. But if it's one of those calls, they can't get my voice.
but it is your voice.
Well, it's a voice that is going to sound really weird, and if I go to court challenging that I agree to this $500,000 loan at 50% interest rate, it's like, no, I didn't. Let's hear the voice. Oh yeah, that's not your voice. No jury's going to believe that.
I
Uh,
didn't know that. So I didn't even know that was a thing.
I,
But I guess.
I assume that's why they're trying to get your voice. I know that they're trying to get your voice.
No,
But I
I
think it's like
thought.
slamming. Remember back in the 90s with slamming? All the
Is
long
that a
distance
Pogs thing?
carriers?
Is that a thing with Pogs? Are you
No,
talking about Pogs?
I'm not talking about fucking pogs. I am talking about long distance phone companies. They would call you up and then they would just say that you agreed to switch to them.
Oh, well, why do they
And
need
then
your voice to do that?
they didn't need your voice back then, but it's the same
Okay.
type of thing because you can give those verbal contracts.
Oh, okay. No,
And
I thought the reason they did that was because they're trying to find what time you actually pick up the phone. So if they hear your voice and they could tell it's a real person, then they'll know to call at that time and date. That's what I thought it was, but I could be
I
wrong.
think they used to do that, but
I don't
one
know
way
why
or
they need
another,
your voice.
that's stupid. You don't do that. They need to be cracking down on these damn phone scammers. Nobody ever does that. It's like,
Phone scams
that
are
pisses off everybody, rich and poor.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. They could campaign on stuff like that. Like, let's get rid of spam calls. I mean, they got the like do not call list. That was a win. Like a lot of these policies aren't they're pretty there's popular policies people can run on. It's just that if they run on them, then they're gonna piss off their donors because well, I don't know what kind of donors if phone scams have a big lobby. Maybe they do, but
A couple years ago, we passed through the House getting rid of daylight savings time. The Senate just never voted on before things were over. They let it expire.
we could well Matt's plan was we just keep adding an hour every day forever. He actually proposed that.
Was he trying to be serious? That would be
It's like,
really fucking with everyone's circadian rhythm.
it's part of his war. I think it's like a accelerationism, but the target is time. He's serious in that he wants to destroy time. I don't know. You should ask
I
him
think
because
we
I
got
didn't.
bigger problems than time, but
I tried to give him. I tried to get him to like give his argument against time, and he didn't do it. So I don't know.
I don't
Apparently,
know.
he's not confident in his stance enough. He just
Oh,
But you should.
yeah.
Yeah, I do want to visit. It's not too cold here. You should come here sometime. Not Probably not in the winter unless you want it to be really cold. But
It's really cold here too, but generally warmer weather is nicer. I remember when we had the national committee meeting in June in Minneapolis, and it cleared up my allergies. I had horrible laryngitis, and as soon as I was in Minnesota, my voice was fine. Just because the allergens are different in the two areas.
I don't know what the air quality is like up there. I mean, you're not even downtown though.
No, I'm not, it's not a matter of air quality. It's just the allergens that were in the air at the time. All the pollen. And I'm allergic to the specific type of pollen that's in Michigan, whereas whatever pollen was in Minnesota, I wasn't reacting to.
I'm gonna send you something on Facebook. Hold on a second. You can. This is the thing.
Okay. Though I think I should probably end the stream at this point, and we continue talking by all means. But I don't think it needs to be public.
I'm probably going to get in trouble for something I said here at some point, I'm guessing.
By who?
I don't know. Oh, I mean, given the subject matter, it's probably people who lean more tanky, I guess. Or maybe, I don't know.
Oh, fuck them. But anyways,
see you
later. I'm going to continue talking off stream. And please remember to like, comment, even if it's hate comments, subscribe, all that.